I thought I would try something a little bit different this week and show you what a day in the training hall at the World Championships is like, just to give you guys a bit of a flavour of the number of athletes you might see in a day, as well as who trains when and where, and the enormous lifts that you might see. This is from the 21st of September, the 2019 World Championships, and so most lifters had not yet competed. Some had, some of the lighter weight classes had, but most of the athletes were still there training and tapering. And as I walked in that morning, I bumped into Tian, who was front squatting up to about 270 kilos, which was actually the heaviest front squat that I saw in the entire training hall over the 2.5 weeks that the training hall was open. Of course, Lasha doesn't really have a front squat, to be fair. Tian competes for Chinese Taipei, and he's actually won the Asian Championships a couple of times. He beat Bahadur Moulay from Iran in 2016, which at the time was pretty incredible considering what a rising star Bahadur was before the horrible car crash that ended his career. But Tian has best lifts of 193 kilos in the snatch, 245 kilos in the clean and jerk. And as they did basically every day, Meso and Forrester turned up to train together again, and this was a morning session, so for them it was back squats, and then Meso at least snatched in the evening along with Ilyn who joined him. But basically the way that they trained was twice a day, back squatting in the morning or front squatting in the morning, and on the days that they back squatted they'd snatch in the evening, and the days that they front squatted they'd clean and jerk in the evening, and they generally go pretty heavy, or at least up to a moderate effort single. And if I remember correctly, Meso didn't go quite as heavy as he normally would on this day, because the next day he was going to be attempting a PR in the front squat as well as a 220 kilo clean and jerk. But later on in this video actually, Meso does return and he snatches up to 160 kilos. And then here tucked away in the corner we have Lasha Talakhadze, who was working on what we now call Lasha pulls, so really these types of pulls have been around for a while. And the idea of these of course is just trying to focus on finishing with the legs and staying over the bar for longer rather than gaining all of your acceleration through the hips. And as with all pulls, and there are lots of different types of pulls, pauses, pandas, partials, high pulls, they all just emphasize a particular aspect of the lift. And the Lasha pull focuses on whatever it is that his coach, George Yasinidze, believes is his weakness. And it seemed that Lasha tended to go light every other day during this 2-week taper, with a few moderate days and heavy days alternating sprinkled in between those light sessions. And this for him is definitely one of those light days. And though of course we have seen some of Lasha's upper body strength, I mean we've seen him push press, we've seen him muscle snatch up to 150 kilos, it's never without the use of his lower body. And even though this is just 50 kilos, I always find it interesting just to see how well he kind of manhandles such tiny weights. Jiří Orsag, the Czech super, was there as well with a heavy 235 kilo clean and jerk attempt. His best lifts in competition are 187 kilos in the snatch, 240 kilos in the clean and jerk, and he actually hit 240 kilos again a few days after this miss at 235 kilos in competition. He did then actually attempt 250 kilos on his third lift for a silver medal in the clean and jerk, but it just wasn't there. He then finished off with this really nice, easy 305 kilo back squat. Now, I didn't actually see a whole lot of Lydia Valentin, but she's always great to watch. And though she's coming towards the end of her career, she has had an incredible one. I mean, 3 Olympic medals, including a gold medal, 4 times a medalist in the total at the World Championships, including 2 gold medals. And for 12 years running, she was a medalist in the total at the European Championships, including a 4-year gold medal streak. So you really have to respect her for the ridiculous length of time that she sat near the top. And on this day, she made 105-130 look incredibly comfortable. And then all of a sudden, Team China turned up and they did what they usually do and split up into 2 camps. Now, they weren't all there because some of them at this point had already competed, or at least they were lifting that evening. Shi Ziyong, for example, I believe was resting for competition later that day. But even so, any subset of the Chinese national squad is essentially the strongest, most medalled group of athletes in the training hall at any point. We had the strongest female weightlifter in the world, Li Wenwen, who was just days away from snatching 146 kilos in competition, 1 kilo under her own world record, and clean and jerking and totaling all new world records. And she worked up to some heavy pulls. And now if you're wondering about weights, by the way, it's a 20 kilo bar that she pulls with, not a 15. And then Tian turned up, and he started lifting literally as far away from Li Wenwen as you could get, which meant that I had to have eyes in the back of my head to make sure that I was set up to film whoever was taking the heaviest lift at any point. And as it turned out, this was Tian's heavy clean and jerk session of the taper, which meant working up to 210 kilos, or 91% of his world record of 230 kilos, which he then, of course, beat a few days later after this with 231 kilos to win his first ever World Championships. Back on the other side of the gym again was now Yang Zi, who was the 3rd Chinese athlete in the training hall at that moment, who was just days away from a world record. In Yang's case, a 197 kilo snatch world record that he would hold for all of 1 minute. But even so, I'm sure that that minute was pretty glorious. What I found hilarious about this, and what you just don't see from the Chinese too often, is the humour with which they train. I mean, Yang is wearing a sparkly, princess-looking belt, almost identical to the one that his teammate Deng Wei wears. And why he wore it, I just don't know, but I think it suited him. It certainly helped him with the 290 kilo back squat, which is the most I've seen from him, though I'm sure it's probably only around 90-ish% of his best single, based on the speed and lack of fire that he showed in unracking and re-racking it. And then I suddenly heard yelling from the other side of the training hall, so I had to run back over to try and get this shot. And I really thought I was just watching 180 kilos, because all I had seen was 160 before this, and so I just assumed that he'd thrown on a couple of 10s, but as it turned out, he had hit 190 kilos whilst I was filming Yang and Li. Then suddenly out of the blue, the 87 kilo Wang Zuyu took this 150 kilo clean and jerk and pulled it unbelievably high. I mean, honestly, pause this lift when she meets the bar. It's so high above parallel, it's just incredible. And you can basically pause any of her competition lifts and see the exact same thing. The two-time world champion earned 3 more gold medals later that week with 120, 158 for a 278 kilo total. And of course, Lou was there too, getting after those Lou raises one day before his world record performance, where he hit 171, 207 for a 378 kilo total. That's just 2 kilos below his best ever total, which he hit as a 77 kilo lifter. He's actually hit between 378 and 380 5 times. And it was then about time for Meso to turn back up again for his PM session with Ilya, who had just turned up to the training hall and decided to join in for some easy clean and jerks. Now, by the way, if you enjoyed the style of video, I've uploaded another one of these videos of a day at the World Championships to Patreon, complete with the commentary with athletes like Toma Loredana, Ritva Suharevs, Denis Ulanov, Boyanka Kostova and Jin Song. So if you want to check that out, it's $4 a month and you get weekly exclusive videos, podcasts and programs. The link is down below. Also, Weightlifting House is closing in on the 100,000 follower mark on Instagram. So if you don't already, please go and follow us there. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next week.